Okay, so I thought that this would be fun. I'm kind of doing another artist battle. You know, who do you guys think had the better career? Who do you prefer more as an artist? So I have the Beatles and I have Queen. You can't see Roger Taylor because he's back there. But yeah, so my take on it, I think that the Beatles are the better artist. I just think that overall they have the stronger discography. If we're going to talk about, you know, the album tracks, they have cohesive, really, really strong albums overall. Now, Beatles for Sale wasn't great, and that's basically just because, you know, they were touring at the time. They couldn't write a whole lot of original material for the album, and so they did a lot of covers, and it just kind of felt like they regressed from Hard Day's Night, even like Please Please Me Better, for example. And so, yeah, it kind of wasn't the best showing. It's like a 6 or 7 out of 10. Not horrible, but due to what they put out before, you know, that stuff was better. That's what I can say, especially the stuff that they put out after, for the most part, I would say as well. Help, you know, it's kind of decent, not one of my favorites either. And then the last one that I would say is the Yellow Submarine album, the soundtrack that they did, but I don't really count that because they're only on like half the album, so I don't really count that as part of their discography. That's just kind of how I feel. But when we look at the strength of the Beatles discography, there's a lot to like. So some of my favorite Beatles albums, also some fan favorites. Sgt. Pepper's Within You Without You was a really great contribution to that record. I like Paul's Granny Songs, When I'm 64, you know, Lovely Rita, all that stuff. And yeah, so I just think that those are enjoyable to listen to and everything. You have the songs that they did during that era that weren't on the album, but are on compilation albums, like Strawberry Fields Forever, Penny Lane, and they regretted putting those on the album, but back then you just didn't put those on the album. You know, they felt like people thought that they got cheated if they put them on the album, so they didn't. But they're on the compilation albums, which are goated, by the way. And so the White Album was just cool, just sonically what they were doing and just all the different moments that they had, you know, having Mother Nature's Son. And then you also had Helter Skelter, which was a really, really cool song as well. Everybody's Got Something to Hide Except for Me and My Monkey. Piggies was absolutely incredible on this album. So yeah, I just think sonically there were so many different like vibes going on and just so many different kind of ideas and like songwriting and like vocals and all that stuff. It's just a lot of cool stuff on this album. So I will definitely say that. And then Abbey Road is obviously incredible, definitely a huge fan favorite. I think that Oh Darling is one of Paul's best vocal performances, one of my favorite Paul McCartney songs. You also had Something, which was very popular. Come Together, I feel like has grown on me, so you had that moment as well. Revolver is super popular. Eleanor Rigby, absolutely amazing what that orchestra did. Let It Be as the last album, I know a lot of people didn't particularly go up for it, but I liked it a lot. I've Got a Feeling it's probably one of my favorite Beatles songs of all time. And then you had the one after 909, which was a really great moment on here as well. Let It Be is very popular, which I'm kind of tired of hearing and everything, but you know, it was a good song, so I think that there were some still good moments on that album as well. So yeah, you had that. They had a really good singles run as well. And just in terms of songwriting, Paul McCartney and John Lennon were a really great tandem, to be honest. And even the songs that they wrote by themselves were really good songs as well. George kind of started getting involved in the songwriting later and everything. Ringo didn't really write that much, and we didn't really care about his songs anyways. Let's just be real. But yeah, you kind of had that. Forgot to talk about Rubber Soul. Rubber Soul, one of my favorite Beatles albums. Michelle was incredible. Nowhere Man, In My Life, Drive My Car, just so many good albums, so many good songs. The Beatles deep cuts are super, super strong, guys. So yeah, and I think that the way that both of their careers went is super interesting, because the Beatles kind of started off more as a pop rock kind of artist and everything. Songs would be like 2-3 minutes and that was it. They got to the point, they had the chorus. I think that they did really good at like the bridges and like the middle eights and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, there's kind of a lot to like just in terms of the song structure and all that stuff, and that's what I liked about them. They were short, sweet, to the point. That's kind of why I couldn't get into Led Zeppelin, for example, because the song is in like the first 2 minutes and then the rest of it is just them riffing off of that. And I digress on that point. Paul McCartney carried vocally. After the Beatles, he carried songwriting wise, let's keep that clear. But Beatles as a group, probably my favorite band of all time. Then they slowly started to get more psychedelic and everything with stuff like Revolver, Rubber Soul, Sgt. Pepper's and everything. So I just think sonically, from when they started to where they ended, is super interesting to listen to. So yeah, that's kind of my vote for the Beatles, and I talked about them for a long time. Queen. So here is my entire thing with Queen, and it's a couple things actually. Number one, if you've listened to Queen's discography, then you know that their best songs are likely to be found in their compilations albums, which are goated, by the way. You can really find the best of Queen there. So I will say that. In terms of their albums, they had some really great albums. They had A Night at the Opera, they had A Day at the Races. I think that I like the Jazz album. They have some good albums, but if you really get into the meat and potatoes of their albums, they're not good. They're not good. I'm sorry, I have to say it. You can go in there, you can find 3 to 5 songs and you're rolling, and the singles from Queen pretty much are always going to hit. But when we're looking at the context of the whole discography, when we're looking at the albums, do we really go out for it? No, no, no. They had Hot Space, which we know wasn't a great album and everything, so you kind of had that moment. And just other albums like The Miracle had good songs, but it wasn't really a great album overall, and that's kind of the story of Queen's discography for me. The albums just aren't cohesive. The albums just aren't really strong for the most part. They had some good ones, but for the most part, go there, find the 3-5 songs you like, and then you'll be rolling, go listen to the compilation album, and that's that. They're probably better musicians than the Beatles, I will concede that point, and they all wrote hit songs, and all the Beatles can't say that. It was mostly Paul McCartney, John Lennon. George got involved later, like I said. Ringo didn't really write like that. He barely had any writing credits. But yeah, they all wrote hits, so gotta give them credit for that. And also, you know, as musicians, Freddie was a better vocalist than anyone in the Beatles. But Paul McCartney goated, one of my favorite vocalists of all time. So definitely can see that point. And it's interesting with Queen's career how they started off, you know, more hard rock and more, you know that kind of vibe, and then they kind of softened up and lightened up whenever they were getting to Hot Space and kind of stuff like that. But Queen had plenty of great songs. Another one by It's the Dust was a great song, and that was a hit for them. I Want to Break Free is probably my favorite Queen song. Misfire, I think, is kind of an underrated gem. Killer Queen, obviously classic. Bohemian Rhapsody, Innuendo, which I actually think is better than Bohemian Rhapsody. Friends Will Be Friends is another one of my favorites as well. Play the Game is an excellent song. So Queen definitely have some really great songs and some moments, but I just think overall Beatles more cohesive and just kind of more interesting as an artist than Queen is. So I would give my vote to the Beatles. I remember whenever I was in high school, I thought, oh, maybe Queen might be better than the Beatles, and then I took a second and listened to the Beatles discography again. I'm like, yeah, the Beatles are taking it. The Beatles are taking it. So I just want to know, because this is something that I thought for a very long time, just want to see where you guys land. I'm trying to get one of my friends into the Beatles right now, and my friend was like re-listening to Queen's discography and told me like, hey, you might be right about what you said about Queen's album. Like, see, I said it. But yeah, let's kind of continue that conversation. Let me know your favorite member in both groups. Beatles, Paul McCartney, obviously one of my favorites of all time, and then Queen, John Deacon will probably be my favorite member in Queen, honestly. Freddie Mercury is a close second. I will definitely say that. Also favorite songs, favorite albums, and let's continue that conversation.